We are discussing first question, that is on discuss the consequences of climate change on food security in tropical countries. I have always talked about understanding of governing dynamics of a question. Which is behind construction and design of the question. These are the most important vital parts of the formation of the question. First is understanding of tropical countries. Question arises, which are the tropical countries? Tropical countries are those countries which are within tropical zone, which is extending from 23.5 degree north to 23.5 degree south. Remember that some of the countries which are tropical do share subtropical zone too. Now we need to select certain tropical countries to provide context and situation to our answer writing. Like India is one with tropical monsoon climate. Then from South Asia we can also select Pakistan and Bangladesh. From Southeast Asia we can select Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, like these countries. From Africa we can select countries of Sub-Sahara. And from Americas we can select countries of Central America. Including Ecuador, some of the countries like Nicaragua and all those countries. Now, the second important point is food and nutritional security. Which is adequate and effective accessibility to food to all, which is physically accessible, economically accessible, with utility and with stability in production, distribution and exchange. Now climate change. Now climate change is a reality. Climate change is a reality and it is source of extreme and fluctuating unpredictable, unstable atmospheric conditions, weather conditions and climatic conditions in form of extremes. like heat waves and cold waves, strong rain storms and thunder storms, flood and drought, anomalous situations like occurrence of El Nino and La Nina. Now, we need to discuss. डिस्कशन का मतलब होता है, डिस्कशन मीन्स कॉजल लिंक्स, मीन्स इंटरकनेक्टिंग कॉजेस या पैरामीटर्स या वेरिएबल्स क्लासिफाइड एज कॉजेस एंड इफेक्ट्स एंड कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस. Effects and consequences, while the causes या parameters defining the causes are interacting with each other. Now, so these tropical countries are overpopulated. Tropical countries are overpopulated as pressure of population on resources are high. These are primarily dependent on agriculture for employment, income, food and nutritional security. And remember that climate, soil and agroeconomic activities which are source of food and nutritional security are at interface. And remember that challenges imposed by climate are not only source of soil degradation, they are also source of water stress, environmental stress on agroeconomic activities. Remember that these capacities are mostly rising economies, developing economies and underdeveloped economies. So remember that this is the challenge side, this is the capacity side. So challenges are high because of the scenario presented by climate change in form of extreme weather conditions which are unpredictable, uncertain, unstable in nature. Other side, these countries are overpopulated with the huge pressure on the natural resources like water, soil, which are source of the agroeconomic activities and related food and nutritional security. And other side, their technological capacity, financial and economic capacity are inadequate. So remember that if climate changes like situations do occur in high magnitude and frequency, the food and nutritional security of these countries are going to become under stress. That is going to be source of hunger, starvation, malnutrition, epidemics and related death. So these countries, tropical countries, come under high risk zone related with their undermined food and nutritional security in the case of scenario presented by climate change. Now let us move on the next question. Now next start. Now next question is why the word today means here central idea is today's word means current and contemporary scenario. Here, crisis is another term we need to understand. Crisis means the growing gap between demand and supply of a given resource. And here resource in question is fresh water. Which is limited on the surface of Earth. In form of freshwater sources like freshwater lakes, ponds, rivers and streams and groundwater. Now, the supply is limited, but demand is on rise of the fresh water. Demand is rise because of the population is on rise. There is improvement in living standard of the people. There is growing demand from agriculture. There is growing demand for industry and infrastructure. There is growing demand from growing urbanization and industrialization. There is growing demand in the case of recurring, acute and chronic drought. So remember that here demand is on rise and demand is distributed throughout the year, whereas freshwater sources and the amount of supplied water is limited because the fresh water is limited on surface of Earth in form of freshwater lakes, ponds, rivers and streams and the groundwater. So this is the source of the crisis. Supply is limited and demand is on rise. So if crisis arises, that increases the gap between demand and supply. That affects accessibility to the fresh water. That interfere with accessibility to fresh water. That interfere with utility to the fresh water. And that interfere with stability in supply and distribution of fresh water. Remember that supply is also on the compromise side because of the growing pollution of the freshwater sources. Even the groundwater is depleting with their overuse, which is above and beyond regeneration. So these are the why means we need to develop causal links in form of discussion. So remember that in the future we need to write the way out too. Way out is the increasing supply of the fresh water. And what could be the mode? Mode could be with rainwater harvesting. Means systems used for capturing, collecting, storing and using rainwater during the rainy season. And if that is captured and collected, that could be used for the dry season too. Then intra-basin and inter-basin linking of the rivers, so that the water from surplus region could be transported to the water deficient regions. Next question. This is one of the unusual question. This is how are the fjords formed. Fjord is a very particular and specific landform. Present in subpolar coastal regions, including Scandinavian countries. Fjords are U-shaped glaciated valleys. Which are under submergence in the coastal regions. That could be with rise of sea level, process of subsidence, yeah, both. So, in which geographical regions glaciers are going to reach to the coastal regions? Of course, in high latitude zones. That is going to be Scandinavian countries and subpolar countries. So, fjords are formed by submergence of U-shaped glacial valleys inside sea in coastal regions. Causes of submergence of rise of sea level with the melting and thinning of the glaciers and the ice caps on the continents and high altitude mountain zones. Yeah, process of subsidence of the land itself due to the endogentic forces. Yeah, both forces could be at the work. Now, why do they constitute some of the most picturesque areas of the world? They produce a kind of mesmerizing landscape which is only available in few countries of the world. They are not universally available on the land surface of the continents and each and every continent. So something which is particular and specific itself become a kind of picturesque area of the world itself. Remember that these are the valleys of submergence. So these are also source of creation of ports and harbors. This is the only question which could be solved, which could be understood by reading G.C. Leong. That is given in some of the lines have been devoted on fjords and ria coast. Ria coast are formed by submergence of the river valleys in the coastal regions, and the fjords are formed by submergence of U-shaped glacial valleys in the coastal regions. Okay, now with rise of sea level, with subsidence of the coastal region itself undergoing endogentic processes, downfaulting, both. And since these are particularly and specifically just distributed in the high altitude areas where the glacier itself are extending up to the coastal regions, they are going to be very specific picturesque area of the world providing facilities for the ports and harbors, especially during the summer season. Because in the winter season, being in the high latitude zone, these are frozen with the ice. And while these are frozen with the ice, these are going to be used for the games which are related with the snow covered surface areas. This is one of the most innovative question asked this year. Remember that to understand Purvaiya, we need to understand structure and physiography of India with syntaxial bending of Northern Mountain Chain. As Northern Mountain Chain, which is made of young fold mountain ranges with sequential and orderly evolution and development from north to south, there is sudden southward turn in northwestern side and northeastern side. For this question, we need to understand this kind of structure and orientation of Northern Mountain Chain. Now, second, we need to take into account southwest monsoon winds, Bay of Bengal branch. Remember that this is the flow of southwest monsoon winds, Bay of Bengal branch. Because of this syntaxial bending of Northern Mountain Chain, these are called hills of northeast. These are deflected westward all along the Northern Mountain Chain and their southern slopes. So, for the people of the Bhojpur, they flow from the east side towards them. That is why the people of the Bhojpur, that is eastern UP and the part of Bihar connected with the eastern UP like Bhojpur district, Ara and all that. Since these winds are coming from eastward, these winds are known as Purvaiya. Because as we know that it is the principle that wind are known by the source of origin. For these people, these winds are coming from eastward. Since these are produced by deflection of the southwest monsoon winds, Bay of Bengal branch. Since for these residents of the Bhojpur region, the people who speak Bhojpuri dialect, since these are coming from eastward, these are called Purvaiya. Remember that this is the significance of Purvaiya. Purvaiya are source of hot and humid conditions. As they flow into the Bhojpur region, they carry humidity. So, there is temperature with the humidity. That makes weather damp. That is also source of heat stagnation among the people, because people face hot and humid conditions. They need to take bath often and again to overcome the humidity related heat in the atmosphere. Like if the temperature is of 32 degrees centigrade, because of the humidity present in the atmosphere, it will seem like it is 46 degrees centigrade. But remember that this Purvaiya itself is also source of cloudy and rainy conditions. And remember that Bhojpur region is largely rural and agrarian, mostly depending on agroeconomic, rural and agricultural activities. So remember that as soon as clouds inflow with these easterly winds, they become source of the rainfall. Now the agriculture season begins. And remember that many of the festivals related with the agricultural activities, related with the social customs and traditions, are related with the traditional months of Sawan and Bhado, including Haryali Teej. So remember that this Purvaiya, which is flowing from into the Great Plains of India from east to west, for the Bhojpur region are known as Purvaiya winds या easterly winds, as their flow is from eastward. These are source of hot and humid conditions. They are the source of bringing in cloudy and rainy conditions, and cloudy and rainy conditions have much impact on cultural ethos of this rural and agrarian India known as Bhojpur. Next. The question is, comment on the resource potentials of the long coastline of India, and the highlight the status of natural hazards preparedness in these regions. Remember that on the mainland of India, length of coastline is 6,500 kilometers. Including islands, 7,517 kilometers. So this is the length of the coastline of India, and these states have longest coastline: Gujarat and Andhra Pradesh. On the mainland, on the west coast, coastline is shared by states like Gujarat, then Maharashtra, then Goa, then Karnataka, and then Kerala. On east coast, we have coastline shared by coast of West Bengal, coast of Odisha, coast of Andhra Pradesh, and coast of Tamil Nadu. And the coastline is also shared by island groups like Andaman and Nicobar and Lakshadweep. So remember that this coastline is source of India's accessibility to entire range of oceanic resources, whether they are biotic, they are abiotic, or they are energy sources. On the surface of ocean, in intermediaries layers, deep inside surface, on seabed. Exclusive economic zone of India is more than 20 lakh square kilometer, means more than 2 million square kilometer. India enjoys exclusive economic zone according to Convention on Law on Seas. And over exclusive economic zone, India has right to explore resources, develop resources, and use resources, and others are excluded. So given the long coastline of India on the mainland, as well as if the offshore island groups are included, provide immense opportunity for India to have accessibility to explore the resources, explore marine resources, develop marine resources, and use marine resources. And that is the need of the hour too, because of the population of India is on rise, and continental resources on the continents are on the sides of degradation and depletion. Their cost of economic exploitation is also on high. So oceanic resources are in the near future are going to supplement, going to provide alternative sources of availability of resources. Now, if there are opportunities, so remember that there are also threats. Remember that strength is source of opportunity. Weakness is source of threat. Remember that India is largely tropical and subtropical. And tropical and subtropical oceanic surface with the tectonic plate boundaries on the either sides into the Bay of Bengal and Arabian Sea are source of origin of tropical cyclones, rain storms. It is also prone to tsunami. It is also prone to storm surge. It is also prone to flood and submergence. Are source of the challenges for conservation and preservation and protection to the coastal, human and infrastructural resources, as well as coastal and sea natural resources. In the recent years, India has significantly increased its capacity and capability to manage natural hazards on the coast in form of long-term preparedness with the coastal land use management, in form of intervention to carry search and rescue operations, evacuation of the people in the safe zone, providing needs to the people who have been evacuated, and finally rebuild, reconstruct if the things are affected by all these kind of hazards. Remember that in the light of global warming and climate change, as the sea level is rising, the magnitude and intensity of threat is going to be rise. It has potential to rise. Thus, there must be continuous improvement into the capacity of India to manage coastal regions. Next. Next question is, identify and discuss the factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation in India. Assess the significance of wildlife sanctuaries in rainforest regions of India. Remember that now we need to identify factors responsible for diversity in natural vegetation, like natural forest, natural grasslands. Remember that both are responsible for diversity. Geo-climatic, environmental factors, and anthropogenic factors. First, I am going to discuss geoclimatic environmental factors responsible for diversity of natural vegetation in India. Natural vegetation we keep inside natural forest and natural grassland. This is the scale of diversity of natural forest in India. Remember that India has tropical rainforest. India has tropical deciduous forest. Even there is diversity in tropical deciduous forest, moist deciduous and dry deciduous. India has tropical thorn. India has tropical grasslands too. India has mangrove forest too. India has, other than this, northern mountain forest, southern mountain forest too. Northern mountain forests are distributed on the hills and hills on the slopes of northern and southern slopes of northern mountain chain, Himalayan mountain ranges. Southern mountain forests are distributed on hills of Western Ghat mostly because some of the hills, particularly in southern parts, they have high altitude. So this is the scale of diversity of natural vegetation in India. Remember that these are the factors. India has large geographical expansion that covers 32 lakh square kilometer. India has physiographic and structural diversity, northern mountain chain to the coastal regions. India has climatic diversity. India has cold deserts as well as hot deserts. India has regions with high rainfall. India has regions with the droughts. There is great diversity in the soil of India. Remember that there are forest and grassland cover which are also endemic in nature. They are connected with the particular geoclimatic environmental conditions of India and related geographical barriers and related isolation. Himalaya is a zone of confluence of several natural vegetation zones. Some of the factors are also anthropogenic, means introduction of agroeconomic activities by different streams of human migrations entering into India and inhabiting India. Now, remember that rainforest region. This is called tropical rainforest. Tropical rainforest regions are tropical rainforest regions include those regions of India in which annual rainfall is 200 centimeter and more, and rainfall is nearly throughout the year. Remember that tropical rainforests are considered as greatest source of biodiversity on the surface of earth. These are also considered as lungs of the earth. These are considered as greatest storage of plant and animal biodiversity on earth. Remember that given their importance in the national environmental and ecological conditions, their conservation and preservations, global environmental conservation and preservation of biodiversity, the wildlife sanctuaries, importance is significantly increased, and they are going to play important role in conservation of tropical rainforest of India for the future conservation and preservation, as well as ensuring sustainability of environment and ecology and agroeconomic development. Last. Here we need to understand the dialectics. Which is part of the development itself. That includes techno-economic development and social and human development. Remember that these have opposition, but these have also integrating. This question is, why did human development fail to keep pace with economic development in India? Remember that techno-economic adaptation and adjustment of the people, which is here in the context are Indian people, is always fast. Like understanding the manner of mobile works, smartphone work, it is easy. Social and human development is relatively slow because social and human development requires investment and economic outlay on education of the people, awareness of the people, sensitization of the people, skill development of the people, supporting inculcation of human values in the people. Remember that the difference in pace of techno-economic development, social and human development is described as cultural lag. Best example in this context is Haryana. Haryana is a state in India which is part of Union of State with high economic growth and economic development. That was achieved through success of Green Revolution in India. Green Revolution ensured rise in the income of the people, rise in the wages of the people, rise in the level of employment, rise in the physical infrastructure related with the rural and agricultural areas, rise in the strong interconnections with economic interconnections with the rural and agrarian agricultural area of Haryana and the markets available in the NCR. But remember that if you look at the scale of the human development, Haryana is relatively backward. And most importantly, we can say the lopsided, uneven gender ratio prevailing in the Haryana. That indicates its human backwardness. So remember that pace of the techno-economic development is always high. Like technology itself is, that value neutral. So it could be easily adopted and used. But social and human conditions, situations are always value oriented. Something which has value and that value is tradition impacted by religion and superstition is difficult to change. And for that we need to increase investment in the parameters of the human development and the social developments like education, health, awareness, sensitization, skill, employment, income to all, reducing inequality, reducing and eliminating rigidities related with the cost and all that. Next. Now this is the final question on the geography. From being a net food importer in the 1960s, India has emerged as a net food exporter to the world. Provide reasons. First, let us examine the scenario of 1960s. Remember that second and third 5-year plan overemphasized on industrial and urban development. Those are also described as Nehru-Mahalanobis plan. So since overemphasis was on industrial and urban development, rural and agricultural development was relatively neglected. This was the period when there was rapid rise in the population of India too, and there was not similar rise in the production of food and food productivity. Third, there were successive drought in 1964, 65, 65, 66. And some of the countries refused to provide food grains to India. So India had suffered from the food crisis in the 1960s. Remember that in the wake of this food crisis, India started, as the 1960s was nearing to an end, these revolutions related with agriculture and allied sector. First, Green Revolution. Then White Revolution, and then Blue Revolution. Green Revolution to increase food production and productivity. White Revolution, milk production and productivity. Blue Revolution, increasing production and productivity of fish production and productivity from both of the sources, freshwater sources as well as marine sources. Now, since these revolutions have seen and worked in India for 50 years, India has turned out from a net food importer country to an exporter country. India has one of the largest storage of the food grains. During the pandemic, Indian government was able to provide food to 85 crores of the people. India, Food Corporation of India maintains a large reserve of the food grains. And how these revolutions were initiated and sustained into the rural and agriculture by providing techno-economic support to the farmers of India, as well as institutional and organizational supports. India has a strong infrastructure to support education, to skill on rural development and agrarian development. This way, the problem which was witnessed by India in 1960s, because of these reasons, now India has nearly eliminated, and now from a net importer of the food, India has been turned out to be a net exporter of the food to the world. And this way, India has managed the crisis with successfully sustaining techno-economic, institutional, organizational supported Green Revolution, White Revolution, Blue Revolution in rural and agricultural areas. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. So, Sharad Mani sir has discussed the geography part. Sir is an authority on geography. I will be discussing the society part. There were 7-8 questions which were related to society. So, I will be discussing them. Let's start with the first question. Do you think marriage as a sacrament is losing its value in modern India? So basically sacrament means sanskar. We talk about 16 sacraments or 16 sanskar. So the question is saying that is marriage losing its value as a sacrament? So first thing is, what does sacrament means? Sacrament means something which has a sacred place, something which is divine, which is respected. So the question is marriage losing that? And it is asking, do you think so? You have to give a conclusion in this. Sound is not coming? Is it coming now? Is it coming, Rahul, now? Am I audible? Sound is coming or not? Okay. So as I was discussing, that the question is, do you think marriage is losing its value as a sacrament? So the idea is you have to give conclusion in this question. Why? Because it is asking for your opinion. Do you think? First thing is this. Second thing is, what can be the arguments for this, that yes, marriage is losing its value as a sacrament? Sound is not coming here. वो लिख रहा है, नहीं आ रही. Okay, everything fine from this side. Maybe technical difficulty from your side, Rahul. Check it out. Sound is going from this side. So what we can do is, we can divide this answer into two parts. In one part, we will be giving the arguments or the evidences to substantiate our answer that yes, marriage is losing its value as a sacrament. तो क्यों लूज कर रहा है वैल्यू, कैसे हम इस बात को प्रूव करेंगे? So the one example which can be easily given is the increasing individualism in the society. The increasing individualism in the society, where people are not ready to sacrifice their self-interest, not ready to sacrifice personal interest. Because you know, the traditional Indian marriages, they are nothing but about the compromise, the sacrifices a couple make to live together. But now, because of increasing individualism, people are not ready to make compromises. Rather, they are focusing on personal interest, personal happiness, personal satisfaction. And this is leading to a decline in the respect or the value of marriage. Second argument can be the rising rate of divorce. The second argument can be the rising divorce rate. Which clearly shows that yes, marriage is losing its value as a sacrament. If you see the data of NFHS 5, this divorce rate has doubled in a year. Divorce rate has doubled from 0.5% to 1.1% in 2019-20, which clearly shows that yes, it is losing its value as a sacrament. The other things to substantiate your answer can be the modern day alternatives to marriage, modern day alternatives which are coming up, like you have same sex marriage, like you have live-in relationship, like you have live-in relationship, like you have the concept of sologamy. Now there is emerging the concept of single parent. The concept of single parent, same sex marriage, live-in relationship, sologamy, all these things are reducing the value of marriage as a sacrament, because in Western society this marriage is what? Marriage is a contract, but in our case it was not, but slowly it is losing that value. The question is about that only. Another answer for this, another reason for this can be the increasing financial independence of men and women, because of which the traditional role of marriage as an economy security arrangement is decreasing, and because of that, because of economic independence, because of financial independence, the role of marriage as economic security arrangement is reducing, because of which also it is losing. So as economic security arrangement is diminishing, the role of marriage as economic security arrangement is diminishing. Another argument in support of this can be the rise in intercaste and interfaith marriages. The rise in intercaste and interfaith marriages. These marriages are no doubt bringing inclusivity in society, they are bringing harmony in society, but at the same time they are reducing the value of marriage as a sacrament because of the interfaith, intercaste marriages, because they challenge the orthodox traditions, they challenge the orthodox practices. In addition to that, because of the rise in education and the value of secularism, rise in education and value of secularism, religion is losing its influence. Religion is losing its influence on marriage and its practices. So these are some of the arguments you can write to show that yes, marriage is losing its value as a sacrament. The another argument which you can give is no, marriage is not losing its sacrament, rather it is still continuing to hold ground, and then you will give some arguments in support of that. So first argument, it is losing. Second is it is not losing its value as sacrament. So in other side you can also give the examples that it is not losing its value as a sacrament. For example, there was this Pew survey in India which said that 40% of Indians consider marriage as sacred union, sacred bond. which clearly shows that still Indians believe in marriage as a sacrament. It is not losing its value. Second thing is the cultural values. The cultural values associated with marriage. Cultural values as well as the rituals which are performed during marriage. Some of you may be knowing about the practice of the ritual of Kanyadan, the practice of Saptapadi. The practice of or the ritual of Kanyadan, Saptapadi, where the husband and wife together walk 7 steps and then they decide or they take oath or take vow to live together for forever. In fact, it is considered not just for one birth, rather for the next 7 births. It is a union for the next 7 births. So these things are still there. We cannot say that it is losing its sacrament because cultural values are there. People still believe in that, and that is demonstrated how? Through the survey of Pew Research. Another reason for this can be we still have monogamous marriage system, and this is socially accepted. Monogamy is the social norm. It is continuing and there is no doubt about that. Then another thing which you can write against this, that it is a sacrament, there is support from the extended family, there is support from the other family members also to continue the marriage, to save the marriage. So, support from parents and extended family. Whenever an issue happens, whenever there is some problem in the marriage, some issue between the husband and wife, the elders intervene and they sort out the issues. They try to save the marriage. They provide emotional and practical support to the couple to save the marriage, which clearly shows that it is still holding its value as a sacrament. We cannot just say that it is losing its value. In addition, the most important, last but not the least argument is the prevalence of arranged marriages. If marriage indeed is losing sacrament, then arranged marriage won't happen. But if you see, they are happening on large scale. In fact, most of the marriages in India, more than 90% are what? Arranged marriages, which clearly shows that marriage still holds its value as a sacrament. More than 90% of marriages are what? Arranged marriages, where the role of family is very important. Marriage is not considered as a marriage between just two people. It is considered as a union of two families as well. So the concept of arranged marriage also demonstrate that it has that traditional sacramental aspects. It is not losing its value. And in conclusion, you can write that yes, there is an undeniable trend. So because this question is asking for conclusion, so in conclusion you can write that yes, there is an undeniable trend towards more individualistic society, towards more pragmatic approach to marital unions, but marriage still holds its value as a sacrament. Still the majority of Indians consider marriage as a sacred union, as a divine union which is permanent and eternal. So that's all for this question. We will be moving to the next question. Next question is, why suicide among young women is increasing in Indian society? It is asking for suicide among young women. It is asking for suicide among young women. For this to understand, the best thing is to look for the NCRB data, National Crime Record Bureau data. If you see for the year 2020, it clearly shows, or the for year 2021, if you see, around 45,000 women committed suicide in 2021. The question is about young women. So our focus will be mainly on young women. If you divide this data, how many women are committing suicide, then you will come to know that one category is housewife, which is the largest chunk. 51% of women who are committing suicide are housewives. Then there is another, students. They constitute around 12% of women who are committing suicide. Then there is this daily wagers, who constitute around 9-10% of women who are committing suicides. And then there are others. From this data itself, you can find out that why young women are committing suicide. The question is asking why suicide among young women is increasing. If you see the numbers themselves speak. So you can accordingly divide this answer. Like if you take housewife, why will housewife commit suicide? It may be because of the gender-based violence, gender-based discrimination in family, gender-based discrimination. A good example of this is torture for dowry, domestic violence. So the question is saying why young women are committing suicides. So if you take the case of housewives, it is because of the gender-based violence, maybe torture for dowry, maybe the domestic violence, which is forcing them to take this extreme step of suicides. In the same way, if you take the working women who are committing suicides, if you take the working women, there is another challenge for working women. What is that? That is managing work and home. They have to do both. And in doing so, they are not getting fair deal. They are not getting fair deal. They are not getting family support. So if you take the working women, they have to manage both work and home. And in doing so, they are forced to work extra hours, and in that they are also not getting fair deal, not getting family support. In addition to that, there are issues of sexual harassment at workplaces. Sexual harassment at workplaces. Often in news we read where a very high professional women, a women placed at very higher level in a company, in a institution, commit suicide. Why? Because of the sexual harassment at workplace, because they are not being provided the conducive environment in the institution. So that is also one of the reason why the suicides are increasing. Another answer for this can be, as I told you, students are another category of young women who are committing a lot of suicides. If you see the quota suicides recently, a lot of them are girls who have committed suicide. And why are they committing suicide? Because there is lot of expectation from them. There is lot of pressure on them to deliver. In addition to that pressure, there is also a problem that because they are feeling that the financial burden is increasing on family because of these women. There was a girl named Aishwarya. He was a student of Lady Sri Ram College 2-3 years back. She committed suicide, writing in her suicide note that I have become a burden on my family. The academic fees, the charges for laptops, they are so much that my family is unable to afford them, and so I am committing suicide. So if you take the students, one is the expectations, pressure of expectations, fierce competition. Another is the financial burden, because if you see girls, they are very sensitive towards their family. They feel that their education is becoming a burden for their family, and because of that they are committing suicides. All these demonstrate that yes, why women are committing suicides. So one is the students. Another good example for this can be the poverty, the feminization of poverty. Like I just told you, one category is housewife, one category is working women, one category is students, one category is the daily wagers, the poor women. If you take the poor women, why do they commit suicide? The good reason is feminization of poverty. The good reason is feminization of poverty. Good reason is feminization of poverty. What does it mean? It means that if there are 3 people who are poor, there is a good probability that 2 of them will be women. That is, if there are 3 people who are poor, 2 will be women. So there is more chance of women becoming poorer than the men. And because of this poverty, because of this feminization of poverty, and you know, poverty can really force you to take any extremes. It can lead you to hunger, it can lead you to other social issues, it can disturb you mentally, and then you can commit you can take the extreme steps of suicides. If you take the farmers in the Vidarbha region, there are many of them are women farmers, and why they are committing suicides? Because of the debt they are having, because of the poverty, they are unable to pay those debts and they are taking extreme steps. So this is another reason why women are committing suicides. That is because of the extreme poverty. UN Women Report also substantiate this. UN Women Report 2021 also says that there are more chances of women becoming poorer than men, as well as it says that the pandemic has led to increase in extreme poverty of women. It has increased extreme poverty of women. Extreme poverty of women has increased because of pandemic more than the men. So this can be another example, another reason. In addition to this, if you take next argument, it can also be this. You may be hearing about a victim, a rape victim, a victim of sexual violence committing suicides. Why are they committing suicides? Because of the attitude of society towards them. Rather than taking steps against the perpetrators, victims are again victimized. They are socially boycotted. They are seen as outcast. And because of this, the victims also commit suicide. The victims of rape, victims of sexual harassment, they take extreme step. Why? Because of the attitude of society, because of the lack of support from society. Lack of support from society. And there are a lot of examples in this category. If you read newspaper, many examples are there related to this. In the same way, if we take victims of rape and sexual harassment, in similar, there are also victims of sexual trafficking. And mostly these are what? These are girl childs. 70 to 80% of sexual trafficking victims are young women. Because of this, they take extreme step. In addition to this, the new challenges which are emerging, they are also causing or forcing women to take extreme step. What are those? One is the relationships. The young women going for relationships and then they have breakups. They feel cheated in a relationship. And when they are unable to manage those emotions, when they are unable to manage themselves, they do what? They take extreme state of suicide. So that can also be one reason, that the relationship problem. In the same way, you can also write about the marital discords. As you know, with increasing individualism, marital discords are increasing between couple. If marital discords are increasing, the women, especially the housewives, they do not have any place to go. Where will they go? And because of that insecurity, they take extreme step. They take extreme step. So that is another reason why women commit suicide. In addition to this, one more reason can be the online harassment, the cyber bullying which is going on, the trolling the women faced on social media platforms. That is also forcing many young women to commit suicide. So the next point can be the online bullying, social media trolling. These are also forcing women to take extreme step. They are being blackmailed through social media platforms. Recently there were some apps which came in light related to this. One was Bully Buy app. One was Boys Locker Room. One was Boys Locker Room. All these things are about, all these things are being used on social media platforms to harass women, to trouble women. And because of this, women are taking extreme step, especially young women are taking extreme step. In addition to this, one more problem that is becoming prevalent is the challenge of mental health issues. If you see the mental health issues, in our society there is lot of stigma related to mental health issues, and people do not approach the doctor for the treatment of mental health issues because of the stigma. And because of this, slowly they will go into depression, they will go into mental health issues, and finally which will result in the extreme step of suicide. So one more problem can be the mental health issues, mental health illnesses. This can be another reason for young women to commit suicide. In addition to this, with the coming of internet, it has become very easy to search for the means to commit suicide. Everything is available online. You can easily search how to die and you will know the answer. So these things are also making things difficult for women whenever they are in impulsive moment, whenever there is an emotional moment and in some impulsive moment, they can easily search on internet and they can commit suicide. So these technology is also somehow helping them in taking this extreme step, which needs to be addressed at the earliest if we have to save women from these things. Now the question is, why they are committing suicides? I have already told you 8-9 points. These are enough for this answer. What can we do to change the situation? We need to de-stigmatize mental health issues. We need to remove the stigma from the mental health issue. We need to work for the social integration of women. In fact, the recently passed Nari Shakti Vandan Adhiniyam is a step in the right direction for the women empowerment, for political empowerment of women. In the similar light, you can also see the guidelines which have been released by CERT, C-E-R-T, the guidelines released by CERT for controlling the cyber bullying, trolling. These things can also help in this regard. In addition to this, Gujarat had launched an initiative of Spirit to counter this problem into students of 14 to 16 years. This is an initiative by Gujarat. Spirit is Suicide Prevention and Implementation Research Initiative. Suicide Prevention and Implementation Research Initiative by the Gujarat government to save the students, especially those who are between 14 to 16 years, from committing suicides. And in the end, you can end this with SDG. There is a Sustainable Development Goal 5, which is about what? Achieving gender equality. So SDG 5, you can write in conclusion, it is about achieving gender equality. So without taking care of the women, without looking after their problem, without sorting out their issues, we will never have gender equality and we will miss out on SDG 5. So we need to urgently work on that. We need to urgently improve on that. Moving to the next question. Next question is about socialization. How child cuddling is now being replaced by mobile phones and how it is impacting the socialization of children. If you see child cuddling, what is child cuddling? This is an act of holding the child in hand. It is an act of caressing the child, loving the child. It can be by the parents, it can be by the family members, it can be by the grandparents, it can be by the fellow siblings, it can be by anybody. But this is what is child cuddling. Because of this, an emotional bond starts between the child and the family members, between the child and the parents. But this is saying that it is now being replaced by what? Mobile phones. You may have yourself seen that whenever a child is crying, many times their parents give them the phone. Whenever a child is doing some mischievous thing or disturbing the parents, they are giving the child the mobile phone. Whenever this happens, what happens? The child will start looking at mobile phone and the problem of parents gets sorted out. But they do not understand that this is impacting the socialization of the child. So they are basically using this mobile phone to distract child, to entertain child, which is nothing but basically shrugging your responsibility. You are doing something and you do not want to give your time to the child. So basically you are giving a phone, but this is impacting the child badly. That's why this question is asking, child cuddling is now being replaced by mobile phones. Discuss its impact. So what is the impact of child cuddling on the socialization of child? Socialization of child means how the child is raised, how the child is brought up, what type of values are being inculcated in child. Because child is like a clay. Whatever values you give to the child, it will take them. It will get inculcated in the child. Whatever shape you want to the child, you want to give to the child, it will be taken by the child. So child is like a clay. When it is like a clay, socialization is very important process. You need to be careful with this. But now with child cuddling being replaced by mobile phones, socialization of children are getting impacted. So what is the first impact? First impact is the reduced physical interaction, which hinder the emotional development. So reduced physical interaction leading to emotional development doesn't happen as expected. So basically it hinder development of emotional bonds. It hinder development of emotional bonds between child and the parents and the family members and the other members of the family. So one is this. Second is the impaired social skills of the child. If they do not interact with the people, what will happen? Their social skills will get impaired. They will not be able to communicate world with the real world people in the real world relationship. They will have difficulty. They will face difficulty in face-to-face communication. They will face difficulty in face-to-face communication. They will have problem adjusting real world relationship. They will have difficulty in establishing real world relationships. So one is the reduced physical interaction, which leads to hindrance of the development of emotional bonds. Other is the impaired social skills. Another can be the social isolation of the child. It may choose a screen over its physical activity. It may choose mobile over its friends, and because of which what will happen? That child will be socially isolated. So this social isolation, this is not good in the long term. So the child may prefer a screen over friends, over outdoor activities. This will lead to what? Lead to sedentary lifestyle. This will lead to problems in the child. Another thing which can happen with this mobile phones is the risk of cyberbullying. There are challenges associated with mobile phones. They can get subjected to cyberbullying, to online risks. There can be inappropriate content. There can be inappropriate content on the internet. It can be inappropriate language. It can be inappropriate image. It can be any inappropriate idea as well. When the child gets exposed to inappropriate content on the internet, what will happen? It will impact its development. It will impact its upbringing. It will impact its social behavior. In addition to all this, one more thing that can happen with this is the impact of mobile phones will desensitize the child. Why? Because suppose you spend a lot of time, if you spend a lot of time with mobiles, lot of time with gadgets, the things which are not real, which are virtual, so what will happen? Over a period of time, you will get desensitized towards the emotions of other human beings. You will lose the empathy. You will not have compassion. So the child will become what? Desensitized, will not have empathy for other human beings. Which can be really devastating, because you will lose the human touch. The child will lose the human touch. Its socialization will not be right. In addition, if you spend a lot of time online, so what will happen? You will not be able to understand the emotions of other. There are non-verbal communication, non-verbal cues. You will not be able to understand those things. Non-verbal cues, facial expressions, because you are not exposed to human interactions. And this can really impact a child's and its socialization. In addition to this, there was another study by University of Cambridge which found out that this is leading to the problem of sleep. Problem of sleep, because you may have read, because of the blue screen. Because of the blue screen, There are difficulties in getting sleep as well. So that study had recommended that parents should limit the screen time of the child, they should fix the screen time, they should allow the child to spend time with the real world, they should have phone free activities, they should have face to face interactions, the study had recommended. So this is about the impact. Basically we were discussing the negative impacts of child cuddling getting replaced by mobile phones. You may be wondering, can there be any positive impact? Yes, there can be some positive impacts, like the access to information, the access to knowledge, the cognitive development. So there can be also some positives like cognitive development of the child. These days there are a lot of mobile apps where different lessons have been very curated properly, designed properly for the development of the child. If the parents give them phone with those videos, those apps, the child will learn them. So yes, it can lead to cognitive development also, educational development also. In addition to this, they can also play games. It can help them in being creative. There are various games available, various recreation stuffs available online. It can make the child creative. It can make the child creative. It can develop the skill of problem solving in the child. So yes, some cognitive development can also happen with the mobile. Overall, if you take the holistic view of this, you can write in conclusion that parents need to strike a balance. Parents need to strike a balance between digital and physical interaction. They need to limit the time children spend on mobile, and they have to also give them exposure to real life interactions, real world interactions, so that they can live a very healthy life, they can grow and they can become a good human being. Their socialization can be proper, because child is like a clay. So that's all in this question. Moving to the next question. Next question is about human development and economic development. Does urbanization lead to, sorry, the question went above. (16). Okay. So the next question is related to, does urbanization lead to more segregation or marginalization of the poor in Indian metropolis? So basically it is about urbanization and what impact it has on the poor. So if we see the process of urbanization, what is urbanization? The increase of population in urban areas associated with the development of cities is basically the process of urbanization. So increase in population along with the increase in the urban areas, development of the cities, development of industries lead to what? The development of urban centers. Basically the factors driving urbanization can be rural to urban migration, it can be the growth, population growth, it can be industrialization. All these things contribute to what? Contribute to the process of urbanization. But if you take the case of India, in case of India, this urbanization has become a double-edged sword. This urbanization has become a double-edged sword. Why it has become double-edged sword? Because these urban centers they are engines of growth. They are engines of growth. They contribute heavily to the population. If you take the Indian case, according to 2011 census, 31% of population stays in urban areas, whereas they contribute 60% to the Indian GDP. Their contribution is almost double to that of their population, which clearly shows that what? Cities are the engines of growth. So in case of India, this urbanization is a double-edged sword. Why? Because one hand it is leading to economic opportunities, it is contributing to GDP, it is contributing to GDP. On the other hand, it is leading to segregation, marginalization of the poor in the metropolitan areas. So basically the question is, does it lead to? So you have to substantiate your answer कि it leads to or not, and if it leads to, how? You will have to give argument. So if you take the argument, there are few data which you can write in this answer. Like if you take the 2011 census, in introduction you can write, if you take the 2011 census, it says that 17% urban households, 17% urban households live in slums, which clearly indicates that yes, a large chunk of urban population is staying in slum in marginalized conditions, and this translates into around 4.6.4 crore people. So more than 6 crore people are staying in slums in Indian urban areas, which clearly shows. So this data you can use for showing the marginalization or segregation. Now taking the arguments in favor of this. What can be the arguments in favor of this question, that yes, it is leading to more segregation and more marginalization. More segregation, more marginalization. What are the arguments in favor of this? One argument is the increasing economic disparities in Indian cities. The increasing economic disparities. So one argument is increasing economic inequalities, disparities. If you take the Indian scenario, urban area, 1% of Indians, there is wealth inequality and there is income inequality. If you take the wealth inequality, what is the condition? The Oxfam report says that 5% of Indians own more than 60% of India's wealth. So the Oxfam report says that 5% of Indians own more than 60% of India's wealth. And if you take the income inequality, there was this World Inequality Report. It says 1% Indian earns or controls more than 22% of total income of country. So when there will be this economic disparity, some people have all the wealth, all the income, and others will be left out. What will happen? Only these people will be benefited from the urbanization. Only these people will be benefited from the economic growth. the others will not get their share of economic prosperity, and this will lead to what? This will lead to creation of wealthy neighborhoods. This will lead to creation of wealthy neighborhoods, gated societies, and the poor, the marginalized, they will be left to stay where? In the slums, where the amenities will not be there. Even the basic amenities like water supply, like drainage, like sanitation, like waste management, these will not be available to the poor. In fact, in slums, there are also problem of overcrowding. So this is one reason that why it is leading to segregation or marginalization. In addition to this, so one is economic disparity, other reason is gentrification. What is gentrification? Suppose low income group people are staying in one neighborhood, but one person comes from outside who is wealthy and he starts buying land over there. So what will happen? If he starts buying land over there, the price of that place will increase, and over a period of time the original inhabitants of those places, they migrate to different places, and this gets totally colonized by the wealthy people. That is the phenomena of gentrification. So wealthy people occupy areas originally inhabited by low income groups, because low income groups, they cannot have the same lifestyle as that of wealthy people. So over a period of time they migrate from there, and for that they have to go and spend their life in fringe areas, those areas which do not have amenities. Another thing is the housing and inflated prices. If you see housing areas, their prices are very inflated, so the poor doesn't have a choice, because they do not have so much disposable income to buy the houses in those areas. So they are forced to spend their life where? In slums, in fringe areas, because of the inflated housing prices. And why these things are happening? Because due to urbanization, due to economic growth, only few people are benefiting from that. In addition to that, you can also see in slums there is not only problem of amenities, but it is also overcrowded. There is lot of poverty, there is lot of crimes, there is drug abuse, substance abuse happening in slums. So what will happen? The next generation of the slum dwellers, they will be raised in such environment, their socialization will be such that they will not be able to realize their potential. They will not be able to contribute to the society to the best of their potential. So it will also ruin their next generation. Why? Because socializing in a slum is really difficult, where you have overcrowding, you have lack of basic amenities, you have crimes happening around yourself, you have problem of substance abuse, drug abuse, all these things going on. So it will have an impact on them next generation also. So this will basically what? This will perpetuate marginalization. This will perpetuate segregation further. In addition to that, if you see the urbanization in Indian metropolitan cities, you can take some examples also in this question. You can give example of Mumbai and its Dharavi slum, which is the Asia's largest slum area, and in near to that only there is high in development. There are societies which are from where the well-off people are staying. So you can give example of Mumbai, you can give example of Delhi and its unauthorized colonies. Delhi is known for its unauthorized colonies. Why all this? Because of the unplanned and haphazard urbanization. Because of unplanned and haphazard urbanization. The next argument can be, what are the counter arguments to this? Does urbanization lead to only segregation and marginalization, or there are counter arguments, some benefits of this also? So yes, there are some benefits of this also. It also creates economic opportunities. The urban job markets provide unemployment to the poor people, the people who are migrating from rural to urban areas. For them, this urban area is what? For them, this urban area is land of opportunity. So there are counter argument also, that urban areas as land of opportunity for people coming from outside. In addition to that, there are also slum redevelopment programs going on. Like in Delhi also, there are programs which are targeting the redevelopment of the slums. They are rehabilitating the slum dwellers. In addition to that, there is also social mobility. Like Delhi government has launched the Operation Bunyad for the education of children in the government schools. It will benefit whom? It will benefit all. So educational initiatives are being taken place in urban areas. When we talk about mohalla clinics, the health infrastructure in urban areas, especially in Delhi. So these are helping whom? These are helping the poor people, the lower class people in the urban areas. So we cannot say that it is only leading to segregation and marginalization. There are also initiatives which are contributing to their welfare. What can be the way ahead? We need to focus on labor intensive industries. We need to focus on affordable housing. We need to focus on slum upgradation. We need to focus on development of public infrastructure, public transport system, which will reduce the commute time for the common people, and it will be cost effective as well, so that we can stop the marginalization and segregation of the urban poor. In addition to that, in conclusion, you can write about SDG 11. SDG 11 is about what? It is about the cities, making cities inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. Making cities inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. So you can write about this. In addition to this, there is this Ahluwalia committee. It also talks about inclusive growth of cities. So you can also mention about this Ahluwalia committee. Because this is a 15 marker, you will have to write these things. This Ahluwalia committee talks about the inclusive development of cities. So that's all in this question. We will be moving to the next question. Next question is about the caste identity. Is the caste identity fluid or static? If we see the caste identity, it is saying, why is caste identity both static and fluid? So basically the question itself is saying that yes, caste identity is having both characters. it is fluid also, it is static also. So you have to substantiate this argument that if it is fluid, how it is fluid, and if it is static, how it is static. The question itself is saying that yes, it is both. So let's start from the fluid aspect. Caste identity is fluid. Fluid means there is dynamism is in caste identity. It is taking new forms, it is assuming new dimensions. The sense of hierarchies or the identities based on caste are getting modified. That is about the fluid nature. So one good example of this is the process of Sanskritization, which M.N. Srinivas talks about. It says what? It says that to move in the caste ladder, the lower castes adopt the practices, the customs, the way of life of the upper caste. So basically the lower caste appropriate the things which are being done by the upper caste to move up in the ladder. So that is one example to show the fluidity in caste identity. Another thing can be the social mobility. If we see the social mobility in caste identity, there is an element of social mobility. How? Because now when someone who is doing his occupational work, if his son or daughter shifts from that occupational work, they assume a new identity. Suppose a son of a carpenter becoming engineer, he will have the identity of an engineer, not that of a carpenter. So there is an element of social mobility. Basically a new identity based on the achievement, based on the academic achievement, based on the achievement in the life, rather than due to the accident of birth. So because of this social mobility is happening. He will be getting a new identity. In the same way, you can also talk about the intercaste marriages. You can also talk about the intercaste marriages. Their numbers are increasing now. According to NFHS 4 data, this has increased to around 11%. The intercaste marriages has increased to around 11%, which shows that the traditional caste boundaries are breaking down and new caste identities are increasing. So basically there is fluidity in the caste. In addition to this, the political mobilizations by political parties, political mobilization is also contributing to formation of new caste alliances. Why? Because when a political party forms a coalition of caste, all caste gets merged into that coalition and a new identity emerged. Like if you talk about Mayavati, he came up with the idea of Bahujan, where there were Brahmins as well as there were the people from SC/ST community, and she was able to make a coalition out of them. So these political mobilizations also cuts across caste groups, and they are able to merge the caste identities, at least for the political purpose, which shows the fluidity of caste. In addition to the reservation policies which are being followed, the affirmative actions which are being taken for SC, ST, OBC communities, these are also contributing to social mobility. They are also contributing to equality, and slowly the caste is losing its hierarchical connotation. It is assuming a different identity. In addition to that, if you see the urbanization and migration, if you see urbanization and migration, when someone migrates from village to the urban cities, it leads to what? It leads to dilution of caste identity. Dilution of caste identity. Whenever someone migrates, it leads to dilution of his caste identity. In fact, if you see in urban areas, class is more important than caste. At times, class become more important than caste. So yes, there is an element of fluidity in caste identity. Coming to the static concept, the static aspects of caste identity. Just we saw the fluid concept. What is static? As it is said about caste, the Hindi of caste it was jati. जो कभी नहीं जाती उसको कहते हैं जाति. So if you talk about the static concepts of caste, it has historical roots, and if you say the arranged marriage, whole concept of arranged marriage is based on what? It is based on the caste identity. If we see the caste based matrimonial websites, caste based matrimonial ads, what are these? These shows the influence of caste, the static nature of caste. If you see the endogamy and the marriage practices, endogamy marriage practices, it shows what? The influence of caste, the static nature of caste. In fact, you may have come across caste based associations. It is so deep rooted, so historically rooted that it is having its own static identity. So there are a number of caste based associations of different caste in educational field, in economic field. Like there is talk of Dalit capitalism, there is talk about Dicci, D-I-C-C-I. All these are what? These are all static caste identities. In addition to that, you may have come across the cases where midday meals were being cooked by a Dalit woman, and she was socially boycotted. She was ostracized for that. So a woman from Dalit community cooking midday meals, there are social restrictions being imposed on her. What it shows? It shows that the static identity of caste is still holding good in the rural areas. In fact, if you take a youth, a typical Indian youth, a very unique combination. He may be educated, he may be an IT professional working in an MNC, but he will be going for what? Arranged marriage, where the parents decide whom to marry. So which clearly shows, and it is based on caste. Basically, they prefer people from their own caste, their own tradition, which clearly shows that yes, the static element is still there. In fact, within caste also, not just between caste, within caste also there is hierarchy. Like one set of Brahmin will say that we are higher in hierarchy than the other set. Like in Tamil Nadu, there is this Iyengar Brahmins claim that they are higher in status than Iyer Brahmins. So these are the hierarchical things, the static things which are still holding ground. So we cannot say there is lot of change. There are also static things. In addition to that, there are also biases, prejudices against the people from lower caste. A good example for this biases, prejudices, and discrimination can be, many times we hear in news that we have to take for Dalit marriage, police protection is required. The bridegroom has to wear the helmet to go for wedding. Why? Because there are chances of attack, there are chances of social boycott, social attack on that, which clearly shows that yes, there are static elements of caste which is still holding its ground. In addition to that, if you see the institutions of the country, most of the institutions, most of the places of decision makings are still being controlled by whom people from the higher caste, which clearly shows that this caste is holding its ground. Most of the professors in the universities, they are coming from the higher caste background. So it clearly shows that yes, those coming from the lower caste, they are at a disadvantageous position, and those who have inherited privileges, they are getting benefited from that. In this question, you can also talk what we can do to change the situation and other thing, and in conclusion you can write that yes, there are signs of increasing fluidity in the caste identity, but at the same time caste is holding its ground, the static elements are still intact, and there is persistence of static aspects. And in conclusion you can write, this underscores the complex reality of castes in contemporary Indian society. It is not simple. In conclusion, you can write that this underscores the complex reality of caste in contemporary Indian society. Moving to the next question, which is the last question. If we see this question, discuss the impact of post-liberal economy on ethnic identity and communalism. So if we talk about first the post-liberal economy, what is post-liberal? That is after liberal. Liberal economy, you may be knowing, it is about the market, it is about the individualism, it is about the less role of the state. But now it is talking about post-liberal economy. So in post-liberal economy, there is more focus on what? Social justice. There is more focus on equity. In post-liberal economy, there is more focus on social justice, more focus on equity, more focus on community well-being. There is more focus on brotherhood. There is more focus on social solidarity. There is more focus on social solidarity. There is more focus on fraternal. There is more focus on fraternal relations. So this is the concept of post-liberal economy. So post-liberal economy is this, after the liberal economy. So it is saying that impact of post-liberal economy on ethnic identity and communalism. Ethnic identity, and this is and communalism, right? So if we talk about what is ethnic identity, ethnic identity is identity which is based on what? Based on the shared culture, shared language, shared history. If we see the ethnic identity, what is this? This is based on the shared culture, shared heritage, shared language, shared traditions, that is ethnicity. And communalism is loyalty to a particular group. It can be religion, it can be race, it can be anything. So it is saying how the post-liberal economy is impacting ethnic identity and communalism. If we take some examples, of this on ethnic identity and communalism, one good example of social justice can be affirmative action. Recently, for women, we had Nari Shakti Vandan Aviniyam. What is that? That is an example of affirmative action. In this, you can take the example of employment for the marginalized. Then only we can have justice. In this, MG Narega can be a good example, where state is providing the unemployment to the marginalized, to the low skilled people. In the same way, in this you can also talk about the cultural preservation efforts. cultural preservation efforts, whether it is popularization of yoga in the world, or the focus on Ayush, or the focus on our traditional crafts. All these are what? All these are examples of cultural preservation efforts. All this will come in under the impact of post-liberal economy. In addition to that, if you take the impact of post-liberal economy on communalism, you can talk about the various initiatives which have been taken to promote the sense of community. Like, there is a realization in post-liberal economy. There is a realization in post-liberal economy that state is not enough. The role of state is not enough. We need to contribute. The civil society needs to pitch in. The community needs to pitch in. And a good example for that can be the role of NGOs, the role of SHGs coming together and contributing in the development process. For example, you can take the example of Pratham in education sector. You can take example of other NGOs like Seva in the sector of women empowerment. So like this, you have to write in this. Like Akshay Patra is there for midday meal. In the same way, in SHG, there is Kudambasri HSG in Kerala, which had led to the development, women empowerment in Kerala. So we have to write about these things in this, the impact of post-liberal economy on communalism, how the safety nets, the insurance programs for the marginalized can be carried out. That's all in society section. I am handing over the mic to Sagar Gupta sir, who will be taking the history portion. Thank you.
Hello friends, now am I audible? Am I audible? So friends, let us start with the history discussion. Before starting the history discussion, I want to highlight some points. Where is the pen? Okay. In this year, 5 questions were asked from history section, and in history section there is some confusion to some students because जो ट्रेडिशनल आर्ट एंड कल्चर का पोर्शन है उस तरीके से सवाल नहीं आए थे. अगर आप क्वेश्चंस का नेचर देखेंगे तो यूपीएससी इज आस्किंग यू to go for more integrated approach in the sense, if we see the type of questions, we will see in detail, but if we see the type of questions, you can't just say they are purely from art and culture. ठीक है, not so आपको इससे ये ध्यान रखना है कि मोर इंटीग्रेटेड अप्रोच आपको रखनी है. जो प्रीलिम्स में आपने तैयारी करी है उसका भी यूज मेंस में आ सकता है. सो डोंट जस्ट गो बाय द conviction that UPSC is not gonna ask you those questions which they generally asked in the prelim section. So if we see the first question is saying about the major technological changes introduced during the Sultanate period. तो ये कह रहा है सल्तनत पीरियड. So first you need to know, generally this is question, this question is from the medieval section, and generally we study this section purely for the prelims purposes, and only art and culture section is prepared for mains. But if we see this question cannot be, you cannot put this question purely in art and culture section. It is much more than this. It is about the technological changes. So technological changes क्या रहे सल्तनत पीरियड में, and how did these टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस इन्फ्लुएंस द इंडियन सोसाइटी। सो सबसे पहले हमें यह देखना पड़ेगा कि सल्तनत पीरियड क्या है। सल्तनत पीरियड इज एस्टेब्लिशमेंट ऑफ दिल्ली सल्तनत आफ्टर द टर्किश इन्वेजन। टर्किश इन्वेजन स्टार्टेड इन द 11th century with the Mahmud Ghaznavi, but this question is about the Sultanate period. Sultanate period is generally from 6 to 1526. 1526 Mughal rule established itself in northern India. So during this period what were the technological changes? If we see the technological changes in the first in the field of agriculture, we know that in the field of agriculture the Persian wheel was introduced by the Turks. Persian wheel क्या है? Persian wheel एक irrigation device है जो improvement था the earlier irrigation device जो थी अर्घट्टा और घटी यंत्र। अर्घट्टा और घटी यंत्र में क्या होता है? अर्घट्टा एंड घटी यंत्र में आप इरिगेशन के लिए मेन पावर का यूज करते हैं, आप एनिमल पावर का यूज नहीं कर सकते। पर इन द पर्शियन व्हील विच वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय Turks, you can use animal power, and at the same time this Persian wheel known as sakia was based on the gear mechanism. Because of these two advancements, the larger area can be irrigated in lesser time. So efficiency and efficacy of irrigation system was improved due to introduction of this Persian wheel, which was a technological advancement on the established irrigation techniques. Now if we move to from agriculture, if we move to the textile sector, in the textile sector, the major changes first were the Persian cotton cardor. It was introduced by Turks. Persian cotton cardor क्या होता है? उसका नाम सद्दाफ होता है और उसका काम क्या होता है? जो कॉटन बॉल्स होते हैं, कॉटन बॉल्स से हमें बनाना है कॉटन थ्रेड, पर उसके पहले जो प्रोसेस है उसको कॉटन कार्डर उस प्रोसेस को करता है जहां कॉटन के जो कॉटन रॉ कॉटन है उसको रिफाइन कॉटन में कन्वर्ट करता है बिफोर द प्रोसेस ऑफ मेकिंग थ्रेड. सो पर्शियन कॉटन कार्डर वाज इंट्रोड्यूस्ड बाय द टर्क्स. द नेक्स्ट टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट वाज द चरखा, जिसको आप आज चरखे के नाम से जानते हैं, उसको बोला जाता है पर्शियन व्हील. उसको इस जो कॉटन व्हील है इसको भी टर्क्स ने इंट्रोड्यूस किया. पर्शियन व्हील सॉरी इरिगेशन डिवाइस है. ये जो कॉटन व्हील है जिसको हम चरखा बोलते हैं ये भी टर्क्स ने इंट्रोड्यूस करा. इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ, इसके पहले एक डिवाइस होती थी स्पिंडल, उसको यूज किया जाता था थ्रेड बनाने के लिए. इट वॉज ए लॉन्ग, इसमें टाइम ज़्यादा लगता था और प्रोडक्टिविटी भी कम थी, पर उसका एक फ़ायदा ये था कि बहुत ही फाइन क्वालिटी का थ्रेड बनता था. चरखे में बहुत ही फाइन क्वालिटी का थ्रेड नहीं बनता है पर स्पीड बहुत ज़्यादा है, तो प्रोडक्शन प्रोसेस इंप्रूव हुई. द थर्ड एडवांसमेंट इन द टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर वॉज द इंट्रोडक्शन ऑफ पिटलूम. पिटलूम में फ़ायदा क्या है? पिटलूम में फ़ायदा ये है कि पिटलूम में हैंड्स और फीट एक साथ आप यूज़ कर सकते हो फॉर द वीविंग पर्पज़. तो वीविंग की स्पीड भी इस टेक्नोलॉजिकल इंट्रोडक्शन से फास्ट हुई. द नेक्स्ट डेवलपमेंट, नेक्स्ट टेक्नोलॉजिकल चेंजेस ब्रॉट बाय द टर्क्स वाज ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग मेथड. ब्लॉक प्रिंटिंग मेथड भी टर्क्स का ही इंट्रोडक्शन है इंडियन सोसाइटी में. इन 4 टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट से जो ये मैंने अभी आपको बताया इन द टेक्सटाइल सेक्टर में इंप्रूव हुई एफिशिएंसी एंड प्रोडक्टिविटी. The next sector which will we take is use of lime mortar. Before the advent of Turks, we were not using this cementing material. Lime mortar was an advancement on the cementing material which was in the use during the pre-Turkish period. हम क्या यूज कर रहे थे? हम जो चिकनी मिट्टी होती है वो सीमेंटिंग मटेरियल यूज कर रहे थे. बट दिस इन द लाइम मोटार वी स्टार्टेड यूजिंग लाइम विद द फाइन पीस्ड ब्रिक्स या फाइनली पीस्ड क्या स्टोन. बिकॉज ऑफ दैट ये जो सीमेंटिंग मटेरियल है इसकी स्ट्रेंथ ज़्यादा थी. इसकी स्ट्रेंथ ज़्यादा होने से द टर्क्स वर एबल टू मेक द ट्रू आर्चेस. देखिए ये जो ट्रू आर्च होती है ये इस तरह की दिखती है. तो हमको पता है कि हमने सबने पढ़ा है कि जो टर्क्स आए ये अपने साथ जो आर्किटेक्चर फॉर्म लाए इसमें डोम्स इन्होंने बनाए, इन्होंने मिनारेट्स बनाई और आर्चेस बनाई. These type of structures, arches, were not present during the ancient इंडियन इन एंशियंट इंडिया, और जो एंशियंट इंडिया के स्ट्रक्चर्स हैं वो बीम और पिलर पे बेस्ड होते थे, उनके इस तरीके के स्ट्रक्चर होते थे। पर इन्होंने जो आर्चेस लाए, तो ट्रू आर्चेस के लिए जरूरी है कि सीमेंटिंग मटेरियल बहुत ही स्ट्रॉन्ग हो, तो लाइम मोटार ये लेकर आए। बिकॉज ऑफ लाइम मोटार दे वर एबल टू मेक ट्रू आर्चेस, एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दे वर एबल टू मेक ट्रू आर्चेस, द नेक्स्ट improvement was because of true arch, now we can make true arches, the next development was bigger domes they were able to make। अब देखिए ये भी आर्चेस है इन 2 डायमेंशन और ये भी डोम है इन 2 डायमेंशन। आपको दोनों में अगर 2 डायमेंशन देखेंगे तो स्ट्रक्चर एक जैसा लगेगा, पर अगर आप डोम को 3 डायमेंशन में देखेंगे तो इससे क्या है, हेमीस्फेयर है, सेम हेमीस्फेयर है, पर आप अगर इसको सेक्शन में कट करेंगे सो इट इज लाइक ए आर्च। यानी कि आप एक अगर सेमी सर्कल लेंगे, आप एक बॉल को 2 पार्ट में काट लेंगे और ऊपर का जो पार्ट होगा वो जो हेमीस्फीयर होगा, इफ वी या अगर उसको वर्टिकली काटेंगे तो जो हिस्सा निकलेगा वो इसी तरह का निकलेगा, वो एक आर्च है। तो डोम इज नथिंग बट कंटिन्यूएशन ऑफ आर्चेस। बहुत सारी आर्चेस अगर एक के बाद एक लगाएंगे तो आप डोम बना सकते हैं। सो डोम जो बड़ा डोम है वो बन पाया बिकॉज दे वर एबल टू मेक ट्रू आर्च। सो दिस इज ए टेक्नोलॉजिकल एडवांसमेंट। बिकॉज इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ, इसकी वजह से वो बड़ा स्ट्रक्चर बना सके, एक ऐसा कमरा बना सकते हैं जिसमें नाउ यू नो देयर इज नो नीड टू हैव मल्टीपल कॉलम्स। जब कॉलम नहीं होगा एक बड़ा कमरा बन सकेगा तो आप ज्यादा स्पेस बना सकते हैं। यू कैन हैव मोर पीपल इन ए सेम अंडर द रूफ इन ए सेम स्पेस, जो पॉसिबल नहीं था पहले। विजिबिलिटी भी बढ़ेगी जो कि पहले पॉसिबल नहीं था अर्लियर स्ट्रक्चर्स में। उसके बाद टर्क्स ने पेपर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग भी इंडिया में इंट्रोड्यूस करी। बिफोर द अराइवल ऑफ टर्क्स पेपर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडिया में नहीं थी। इंडिया में हम जो भी अगर कुछ लिखते भी थे, हम या किस पे लिखे थे, जो बाक्स होती थी ट्री की उनके ऊपर लिखते थे, या फिर कॉपर पे लिखते थे, कॉपर प्लेट्स का ट्रेडिशन था, या फिर पाम लीव्स पे लिखते थे। तो पेपर वॉज नॉट मैन्युफैक्चर्ड इन इंडिया बिफोर द अराइवल ऑफ टर्क्स। टर्क्स इस ट्रेडिशन को बाहर से इंडिया, सेंट्रल एशिया से लेकर आए और इंडिया में चालू हुआ मैन्युफैक्चरिंग ऑफ पेपर। हालांकि ये भी सच है कि ड्यूरिंग द टाइम ऑफ सल्तनत पीरियड ए लार्ज क्वांटिटी ऑफ पेपर वाज इंपोर्टेड इन इंडिया, बट पेपर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग इंडिया में भी चालू हुआ। और बिकॉज ऑफ पेपर मैन्युफैक्चरिंग, क्योंकि अब पेपर्स का यूज होने लगा फॉर राइटिंग फरमान्स एंड बुक्स, ए न्यू टाइप ऑफ क्राफ्ट्स इमर्ज विच वाज बुक बाइंडिंग। बहुत ही कॉमन चीज है आज के संदर्भ में फॉर द करंट परस्पेक्टिव, बट बुक बाइंडिंग craft started because people started using paper. So it is a new advancement, new technology during those times. Next, मिलिट्री फील्ड में भी कई नए टेक्नोलॉजिकल इंट्रोडक्शन किए गए, नई टेक्नोलॉजी इंट्रोड्यूस करी गई टर्क्स के द्वारा। व्हाट वर दोज टेक्नोलॉजीज? फर्स्ट, the use of gunpowder. Gunpowder was not used for the military purposes during the initial time, but the gunpowder was introduced by Turks, and we know by the writings of the 14th century writers that pyrotechny क्या होता है? आतिशबाजी। Pyrotechny was the favorite sport of फिरोज शाह तुगलक। So ये जो बारूद है, ये जो गन पाउडर है, it was introduced by Turks in India. And the other things which were introduced in the field of military, the Persian bow, known as Novak, it was introduced by them. The iron horseshoe, it was introduced by them. The iron stirrup was introduced by them. So it also improved the military capability. The next thing is tin coating. Tin coating was also introduced by Turks during the Sultanate period. So these are the some of the major technological achievements, major technological advancement which was witnessed during the time of Sultanate period. And the next question is, how did those technological changes influence the Indian society? तो हम देखेंगे जो हमने इम्प्रूवमेंट देखे इन द फील्ड ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर, इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ, इरिगेशन टेक्निक में जो इम्प्रूवमेंट हुआ, क्या हुआ इसकी वजह से, production of agriculture now can be improved because large area of tracts now can be during the same आपका एफर्ट है, सेम टाइम पीरियड में आप ज़्यादा एरिया इरिगेट कर सकते हो, तो नेचुरली आप क्या इम्प्रूव कर सकते हो, अपना प्रोडक्शन। इसी तरह से हमने देखा जो कॉटन प्रोडक्शन है, कॉटन जो टेक्सटाइल इंडस्ट्री है, उसमें जो नए इम्प्रूवमेंट हुए, नए टेक्नोलॉजी इंट्रोड्यूस्ड हुई, इसकी वजह से टेक्सटाइल प्रोडक्शन बढ़ा। सिमिलरली टिन कोटिंग की वजह से यूज जो कॉपर के जो यूटेंसिल्स हैं उन पे जो टिन कोटिंग हुई, इसकी वजह से उनका यूज़ बढ़ा। इसी तरह जो टेक्नोलॉजी, आर्मी की टेक्नोलॉजी है, मिलिट्री टेक्नोलॉजी है, उसकी वजह से मिलिट्री कैपेबिलिटी बढ़ी। और इस पेपर बाइंड, नए क्राफ्ट्स आए, हमने देखा कि बुक बाइंडिंग एक नई ट्रेडिशन चालू हुआ। हमने देखा आर्किटेक्चर में कितने इंप्रूवमेंट हुआ। बिकॉज ऑफ ऑल दीज रीजंस क्या हुआ, प्राइमरी और सेकेंडरी इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटीज में इंप्रूवमेंट हुआ। इनकी वजह से क्या हुआ, जो सेकेंडरी, जो इन इकोनॉमिक एक्टिविटी में लोग इन्वॉल्व थे उनका स्टेटस बढ़ा। एंड बिकॉज ऑफ दिस ट्रेड एंड कॉमर्स बढ़ा, एंड इट ऑल लेड टू द इमरजेंस ऑफ urban centers, the new urban centers and the earlier urban centers, इनका expansion हुआ. So in the 13th and 14th century, that is why these centuries are known as time of urban revolution in India. So this is the answer of this question. हमने देखा आंसर बहुत ही सिंपल था. आपको क्या जरूरी है, you have to keep things simple. आप जब अपनी तैयारी करें, when you are studying, what you need to keep in mind that your preparation should be simple yet very firmly based on the fundamentals. आपको अपनी तैयारी बहुत ही सिंपल रखनी है, बट इट शुड बी फर्मली बेस्ड ऑन द रिसोर्सेज विच आर वेरी स्टैंडर्ड. अगर आपने स्टैंडर्ड मटेरियल यूज़ किया हो, सो ये हालांकि जनरली आर्ट एंड कल्चर में नहीं पढ़ाया जाता है, पर अगर आपने प्रीलिम्स के टाइम पे उसको अच्छे से पढ़ा हो तो इट्स अ वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चन. ऑल यू नीड टू हैव इज अ सिंपल अप्रोच. इफ वी गो टू द नेक्स्ट, हाउ विल वी मूव? अच्छा, ठीक. सो द नेक्स्ट क्वेश्चन, ये भी अगर आप देखेंगे तो ये बहुत ही सिंपल क्वेश्चन है. अगर आपने एनसीईआरटीज अच्छे से पढ़ी हो और आपने प्रीलिम्स की तैयारी अच्छे से करी हो, सो इट्स अ वेरी सिंपल क्वेश्चन. क्या है क्वेश्चन? What are the main features of Vedic society and religion? So Vedic society और religion के फीचर की क्या है, बेसिक फीचर आपसे पूछ रहा है. और the next part of the question is, do you think some of the features are still prevailing in Indian society? अभी क्या इनमें से कोई फीचर अभी भी सोसाइटी का पार्ट है, इंडियन सोसाइटी का पार्ट है? बिफोर अटेम्प्टिंग दिस क्वेश्चन, वी फर्स्ट शुड नो कि वैदिक सोसाइटी की जो बात हो रही है, वैदिक रिलीजन की बात हो रही है, तो वैदिक टाइम पीरियड क्या है? Vedic time period है, if we see the Vedic period is 1500 BC to 600 BC. Now this Vedic period is also further divided into two parts: early Vedic age, later Vedic age. इसमें क्या टाइम पीरियड डिवीजन है? 1500 BC to 1000 BC और 1000 BC to 600 BC. अब जब हम किसी भी क्वेश्चन को अटेम्प्ट करते हैं, जनरली दो तरह के हमारे को प्रॉब्लम आ सकती है. फर्स्ट, हमारे पास इंफॉर्मेशन की कमी है, इंफॉर्मेशन हमारे पास कम है. या फिर एक और तरह की प्रॉब्लम आ सकती है कि वी हैव इनफ, हमारे पास प्लेंटी ऑफ इंफॉर्मेशन है, हम उसको कंडेंस नहीं कर पा रहे हैं. सो इस क्वेश्चन में भी अगर आप देखेंगे, अप्रोच क्या होना चाहिए, हाउ टू कंडेंस सो मेनी थिंग्स विच यू ऑलरेडी नो इन ए 250 वर्ड्स आंसर. सो कंडेंस करने के लिए बहुत जरूरी है कि आपका जो स्ट्रक्चर है वो बहुत ही अच्छा हो, ताकि जो भी आपको पता है वो कुछ छूट ना जाए. सो इस क्वेश्चन को अटेम्प्ट करने के लिए आपका अप्रोच क्या होना चाहिए अकॉर्डिंग टू मी, क्योंकि ये पूछ रहा है मेन फीचर्स ऑफ वैदिक सोसाइटी एंड रिलीजन. सो फर्स्ट वी विल राइट द मेन फीचर्स ऑफ वैदिक सोसाइटी, देन वी विल गो टू वैदिक कॉमन फीचर्स ऑफ वैदिक रिलीजन. और उसमें भी कुछ फीचर्स सोसाइटी के इन दोनों टाइम पीरियड में कॉमन रहेंगे. तो फर्स्ट वी विल राइट अबाउट द दोज कॉमन फीचर्स जो इस टाइम पीरियड में सेम है, देन वी विल राइट दोज फीचर्स जो दोनों टाइम पीरियड में अलग अलग हैं. सिमिलरली वी विल डू विद रिलीजन. इस तरीके से आप सारे पॉइंट कवर भी कर पाएंगे, और साथ ही साथ पॉइंट कवर करने के साथ आप बहुत ही अच्छे स्ट्रक्चर में इस आंसर को लिख पाएंगे. सो how to start? First we will, in introduction we will write the period from 1500 BC to 600 BC is known as Vedic period, which is further divided into two parts: later early Vedic period and later Vedic period, जो हमने यहाँ पे लिखा है. Then ज़्यादा टाइम नहीं लगाएंगे, we will just move to main features of Vedic society. So main features क्या है, हम सिंपल तरीके से चालू करेंगे. main feature क्या है कि सोसाइटी कैसी है? सोसाइटी है जो फैमिली है, इट इज द प्राइमरी यूनिट ऑफ सोसाइटी। प्राइमरी यूनिट है जिसको नाम क्या है, कुल, और हेड है कुलापा। द सेकेंड पॉइंट विच विल राइट इज द प्रीडोमिनेंस ऑफ प्राइमरी रिलेशनशिप्स। उसके बाद हम मूव करेंगे, तीसरा पॉइंट क्या रहेगा, मैरिज इज ए सैक्रोसैंक्ट इंस्टीट्यूशन, यानी कि डिसोल्यूशन ऑफ मैरिज वाज नॉट पॉसिबल ड्यूरिंग दिस टाइम पीरियड। द थर्ड पॉइंट इज, हम इसके आगे हम क्या लिखेंगे, स्लेवरी वाज प्रेजेंट। फिर आगे हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, एजुकेशन का ट्रेडिशन प्रेजेंट था, पर एजुकेशन कैसे इम्पार्ट करी जाती थी, ओरली एजुकेशन वाज इम्पार्टेड। ठीक है, उसके बाद हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, स्लेवरी वाज नोन, हमें स्लेवरी वाज नोन। उसके अलावा हम और क्या लिख सकते हैं, मोनोगेमी वाज, जो मोनोगेमी है यानी कि एक ही शादी हो रही है, वो मोर प्रिविलेंट थी, बट पॉलीएंड्री और पॉलीगेमी वाज आल्सो प्रेजेंट। ठीक है, उसके बाद जब इस तरह की बात हम लिख रहे हैं तो अब ये तो कॉमन फीचर्स हो गए। अब आगे हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, हम लिख सकते हैं जब अब डिफरेंस जब दोनों टाइम पीरियड में बताएंगे तो डिफरेंस में हम क्या लिखेंगे, अर्ली वैदिक एज में दैट वर्ना सिस्टम वाज नॉट वेल डेवलप्ड ड्यूरिंग द अर्ली वैदिक पीरियड, बट इट इमर्ज ड्यूरिंग द लेटर वैदिक पीरियड। और हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, द सोसाइटी ड्यूरिंग द अर्ली वैदिक पीरियड वाज more egalitarian compared to later Vedic period, because in later Vedic period the privileged position was given to acquired by the Brahmanas and Kshatriyas, which was not the case during the period of early Vedic age. उसके अलावा हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, sati was the practice of sati was absent during the both the time, so common feature में आप लिख सकते हैं। और क्या लिख सकते हैं, the cow, the meat of cow was prohibited, you can't eat the meat of cow, ये भी एक कॉमन फीचर है। the king was the highest judicial officer, कॉमन फीचर है। तो इस तरह से आप सोसाइटी को डिफाइन कर सकते हैं बहुत ही सिंपल पॉइंट्स में कि सोसाइटी, वैदिक सोसाइटी कैसी थी। इसी तरह जब आप, हाँ, और क्या लिख सकते हैं, गोत्रा है, गोत्रा जो है वो लेटर वैदिक एज में इमर्ज हुआ, आश्रम सिस्टम वो भी लेटर वैदिक एज में इमर्ज हुआ, तो ये पॉइंट भी आप लिख सकते हैं। अब आप अगर रिलीजन पे जाते हैं तो रिलीजन में हमें पता है कॉमन फीचर्स क्या हैं, हमें पता है कि सेक्रीफाइस और यज्ञ वाज द कॉमन फीचर ऑफ वैदिक रिलीजन। उसके बाद हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, प्रीडोमिनेंस ऑफ मेल गॉड्स, ये भी वैदिक रिलीजन का कॉमन फीचर है। नेचर एंड एनिमल वर्शिप, ये भी कॉमन फीचर है। और नो द टेम्पल प्रेजेंस ऑफ टेम्पल वाज एब्सेंट और आइडल वर्शिप वाज एब्सेंट, ये कॉमन फीचर्स हैं। अगर ये हम लिखेंगे वैदिक रिलीजन में, और क्या पॉइंट लिख सकते हैं, डिफरेंस क्या क्या है, ड्यूरिंग द लेटर वैदिक एज द रिचुअल्स एंड सैक्रिफाइसेस वर दे बिकेम मोर एलोबरेटिव और मोर कॉस्टली। उसके बाद हम क्या लिख सकते हैं कि जो अर्ली वैदिक एज है उसमें प्राइमरी गॉड्स कौन से हैं, उसमें प्राइमरी गॉड्स हैं इंद्रा, वरुण और अग्नि, यानी कि फायर गॉड। और बाद में ड्यूरिंग द लेटर वैदिक एज ये ट्रिनिटी चेंज हो गई। अब हमारे पास है प्रजापति, विष्णु और रुद्र। ठीक है, तो ये चेंजेस हैं ड्यूरिंग दीज टू पीरियड्स ऑफ वैदिक एज। अब हमने फर्स्ट पार्ट इसको लिख लिया है। द सेकेंड पार्ट इज, डू यू थिंक सम ऑफ द फीचर्स आर स्टिल प्रिवेलिंग इन इंडियन सोसाइटी। तो इसमें हमें छोटा सा लिखना है क्या फीचर्स स्टिल प्रिवेलिंग है। हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, फैमिली इज स्टिल द बेसिक यूनिट ऑफ सोसाइटी। दूसरा हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, वर्ना सिस्टम अभी भी कुछ रूप में प्रेजेंट है। तीसरा हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, मैरिज इज स्टिल ए इंपॉर्टेंट इंस्टीट्यूशन। चौथा क्या लिख सकते हैं, नेचर और एनिमल वर्शिप अभी भी रिलीजन में प्रैक्टिस होती है। पांचवा पॉइंट हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, सेक्रीफाइसेस तो नहीं, यज्ञ अभी भी इंपॉर्टेंट फीचर है हमारी रिलीजन का। और क्या लिख सकते हैं, प्रजापति, विष्णु और रुद्र ये अभी भी इंपॉर्टेंट गॉड्स हैं। सो दीज आर सम ऑफ द फीचर्स which are currently present in part of Indian society। Conclusion में आप लिख सकते हैं कि we can witness that some of the traditions, some of the culture, some of the practices are still present in society। The positive things we need to taken forward and the negative चीजें हैं सोसाइटी में जो सोसाइटी को नेगेटिवली हार्म कर रही हैं या अफेक्ट कर रही हैं, we have to leave them। So इस तरीके से आप इस आंसर को लिख सकते हैं। We have to keep or change? थर्ड, अगर आप थर्ड क्वेश्चन देखें, थर्ड क्वेश्चन इज एक्सप्लेन द रोल ऑफ ज्योग्राफिकल फैक्टर्स टुवर्ड्स द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया। तो आपको रोल ऑफ ज्योग्राफी एक्सप्लेन करना है टुवर्ड्स द डेवलपमेंट ऑफ एंशिएंट इंडिया। आप अगर आपने एनसीईआरटी देखी हो एंशिएंट इंडिया की, आई थिंक थर्ड या फोर्थ चैप्टर है जिसमें इस क्वेश्चन में जो पूछा है वही चैप्टर में पूरा दिया हुआ है। सो अगेन जो मैंने पहले कहा था कि आपको सिंपल रखनी है तैयारी, पर आपकी जो फाउंडेशन है वो बहुत ही स्ट्रॉन्ग और जो कॉमन रिसोर्सेज हैं उनमें बेस्ड होनी चाहिए। तो अगर आपने वो पढ़ा हो तो ये बहुत ही क्वेश्चन सिंपल है, पर इसमें जो प्रॉब्लम किसी को फेस हो सकती है वो ये है कि हाउ टू राइट ऑल दीज थिंग्स इन 150 वर्ड्स, विच इज 10 मार्क्स के क्वेश्चन में आंसर में आपको कैसे लिखें। सो वी कैन स्टार्ट दैट ए कंट्रीज हिस्ट्री इज इन्फ्लुएंस्ड बाय द ज्योग्राफी ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया। ये अभी भी सही है और हिस्ट्री में भी सही था और फ्यूचर में भी ये सही रहेगा कि जो ज्योग्राफी है, ज्योग्राफी प्लेज ए वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट रोल इन द हिस्ट्री मेकिंग ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया, या उस एरिया की हिस्ट्री में बहुत ही इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करता है। अगर हमें इंडिया के बारे में लिखना हो तो एंशिएंट इंडिया को कैसे इसने डेवलप, क्या रोल रहा है ज्योग्राफिकल फैक्टर का, तो हम हिमालय से जब चालू करेंगे तो वी कैन राइट दैट इन द नॉर्दर्न पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया वी हैव द माइटी हिमालयाज बिकॉज विच protected India from foreign invasions from the northern side. It also protected India from the cold Arctic winds. Because of that, in northern India comparatively have a warm, fairly warm weather, which was helpful for growth of many flora and fauna. उसके अलावा हम क्या लिख सकते हैं, नॉर्थ वेस्टर्न साइड में हम अगर देखेंगे तो देयर वर पासेस लाइक द खेबर पास, गोमल पास एंड बोलन पास विच कैन बी crossed, and because of that there was constant exchange of cultural exchange and economic exchange between the people of both the sides। यानी कि जो इंडिया में रह रहे थे और जो इंडिया के बाहर रह रहे थे इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट के, दे कैन continuously interact with each other because these passes were accessible from the both ends। ठीक है, ये आप लिख सकते हैं। आप इसमें आगे भी बात कर सकते हैं कि आर्यंस आए इसी पाथ से, द इंडो ग्रीक्स केम टू इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट, कुशानाज आए, शाकाज आए, इस तरीके के पॉइंट्स आप, हुनाज आए, इसी जगह से आए, इन्वेडर्स भी आए और ट्रेडर्स भी आए। अगर हम आगे बढ़ते हैं तो नाउ वी कैन मूव टू द रिवर्स और फर्टाइल प्लेन्स ऑफ नॉर्दर्न इंडिया। दैट रिवर्स, दीज फर्टाइल प्लेन्स, दीज रिवर वैलीज वर क्रेडल्स ऑफ सिविलाइजेशंस। इंडस वैली सिविलाइजेशन कह लो, वैदिक कल्चर कह लो, और उसके बाद की जितने भी किंगडम्स हैं, दे वर एबल टू प्रोस्पर बिकॉज ऑफ दीज फर्टाइल प्लेन्स ऑफ नॉर्दर्न इंडियाज। ये क्योंकि दे वर द प्लेस जहाँ पे हिमालय से जो निकलने वाली पेरेनियल रिवर्स हैं, दे आर प्रेजेंट उनकी, और इनके फर्टाइल प्लेन्स हैं, जिसकी वजह से एग्रीकल्चर कैन प्रोस्पर। बिकॉज ऑफ दिस एग्रीकल्चर, ऑन द स्ट्रेंथ ऑफ दीज एग्रीकल्चर प्रोस्पर्स एग्रीकल्चर, क्या हुआ, ज़्यादा आप फूड सरप्लस अटेन कर पाए, विच लेड टू द इमरजेंस ऑफ बिग किंगडम्स लाइक द मौर्यन किंगडम। द फर्स्ट पैन इंडियन एम्पायर ऑफ इंडियन सब कॉन्टिनेंट इमर्ज ड्यूरिंग द एंशिएंट इंडिया बिकॉज ऑफ on the basis of strength of for large fertile plains available to people of northern India। उसके बाद आप विंध्यास पे जा सकते हैं। विंध्यास क्या है, विंध्यास सेंट्रल इंडिया में। विंध्यास एक्टेड एज ए बैरियर बिटवीन द पीपल ऑफ नॉर्दर्न इंडिया एंड पेनिनसुलर इंडिया बिकॉज इट इज इनएक्सेसिबल, नॉट easy to go from one side to another। because of that reason the southern peninsular India can develop their distinct socio-cultural outlook। that is why most of the time it was difficult for a power situated in northern or southern India to control the other part। that is why in ancient times we found only one empire, pan Indian empire, that is Mauryan empire। it itself shows how difficult it was to travel from one place to another or to keep control on one place from the either southern place from northern India or northern India from southern India। that is why Rashtrakutas, the very famous and powerful kings of peninsular India, they were able to keep coming during the tripartite struggle। they were able to keep coming to northern India, they were able to defeat the many northern powers but they were not able to control directly both parts, northern India and southern India. Then we can move to large coastline of peninsular India. Because peninsular India has a large coastline, it was possible for people of these living on those coastline to have a what, maritime trade, a developed maritime trade. There are evidences that people of ancient India, they were having a prosperous maritime trade with people of Rome, with people of Middle East, with people of Southeast Asia, with people of East Asia. And with this prosperous trade also went the Indian culture, Indian languages, Indian religion to the outside world. So in this way it helped in the geography helped in the development of India during the ancient time. We can also see the forest resources, we can also see the natural resources present in different parts of India and their role in development of ancient India. So these things we can write in this answer. The only problem which I think you will face is this, keep or change. This document is available in the link section. You can go and download this document if you want. So it is a exhaustive document. हम 150 वर्ड्स में जो हमें आंसर लिखना है उससे ज़्यादा है, so that आप एक बार thoroughly इसको देख सकें. Now the fourth question which we will discuss is, how did the colonial rule affect the tribals in India? And what was the tribal response to the colonial oppression? So here also we have two parts. The first part is how the colonial rule affected the tribals. So सबसे पहले इस तरह के आंसर देखिए, मैंने पहले कहा हमें बहुत ही सिंपल तरीके से अप्रोच रखना है. वी हैव टू हैव ए सिंपल अप्रोच. तो पहले तो हमें ये ध्यान रखना है व्हाई द कॉलोनियल रूल वाज इन इंडिया. कोई भी कॉलोनियल रूल का बेसिक प्रिंसिपल क्या है? हैव द पॉलिटिकल पावर सो दैट यू कैन एक्सप्लॉइट दैट टेरिटरी, एक्सप्लॉइट दैट एरिया इकोनॉमिकली. सो दे वर इन इंडिया टू एक्सप्लॉइट इंडिया इकोनॉमिकली. सो अगर वो ट्राइबल एरिया में भी जाएंगे तो उनका बेसिक पर्पस क्या होगा? टू एक्सप्लॉइट द ट्राइबल एरियाज इकोनॉमिकली. सो जब आप किसी एरिया को इकोनॉमिकली एक्सप्लॉइट करना चाहेंगे तो उसकी वजह से जो जो प्रॉब्लम्स वहाँ के नेटिव लोगों को होगी, द नेटिव पीपल will face many problems because of this economic exploitation and the policies of that colonial power. That is the way, in that way we have to think and write a very simple answer. So first question, in the introduction we will write that because the tribal people what they were having, they were living in an area which was rich in forest resources and mineral resources. The colonial power या colonial rule was attracted towards those area in which tribals were living, and they adopted economic exploitation इस एरिया का किया गया. तो इस वजह से, because we have to write only 250 words, the how colonial rule affected the tribals, इसमें हम अगर पॉइंट लिखें तो फर्स्ट पॉइंट हमें लिखना है क्या इन्होंने करा? बिकॉज ऑफ द लैंड पॉलिसी adopted by colonial rule, इसकी वजह से क्या होगा? लैंड एलियनेशन इनको फेस करना पड़ा. ट्राइबल पॉपुलेशन को लैंड एलियनेशन फेस करना पड़ा ट्राइबल एरियाज में. किसकी लैंड पॉलिसीज की वजह से? जो कॉलोनियल रूल की लैंड पॉलिसीज थी से, इसकी वजह से क्या हुआ? इकोनॉमिक डेप्रीवेशन. सेकेंड पॉइंट क्या हुआ? ट्राइबल सोसाइटी में क्या होता है? जॉइंट ओनरशिप. पर जो इनकी लैंड पॉलिसी थी उसकी वजह से क्या हुआ? लैंड जॉइंट ओनरशिप की जगह क्या हो गई? इंडिविजुअल ओनरशिप. तो इस इंडिविजुअल ओनरशिप की वजह से जो सोशल फैब्रिक था ट्राइबल सोसाइटी का वो अफेक्ट हुआ. द थर्ड पॉइंट इज, किसी भी ट्राइबल सोसाइटी में अगर आप देखेंगे, द जनरली व्हाट काइंड ऑफ एग्रीकल्चर दे प्रैक्टिस, they burn the area, slash and burn. So they burn the area. This slash and burn technique was prohibited by colonial rulers, which also affected them adversely. किसको? ट्राइबल्स को adversely affect हुई. क्यों? क्योंकि जो टिम्बर और अदर रिसोर्सेस है, कॉलोनियल रूलर्स चाहते थे कि वो वेस्टेज ना हो, पर जो इनका ट्रेडिशनल तरीका है वो है स्लैश एंड बर्न. सो इस पे प्रोहिबिशन हुआ तो वापस इकोनॉमिक डिप्रीवेशन हुआ. द फोर्थ पॉइंट विच वी कैन राइट, बिकॉज ऑफ दिस इंटीग्रेशन ऑफ दीज एरिया इन द कॉलोनियल इकोनॉमिक सिनेरियो, जब कॉलोनियल इकोनॉमी क्या हुआ, जो इन्फ्लक्स से आउटसाइडर्स का वो इन ट्राइबल एरियाज में बढ़ा. इन्फ्लक्स, अब ये गवर्नमेंट एजेंट्स भी थे, जैसे कि पुलिस हुआ, या रेवेन्यू एजेंट्स हुए, या फिर रेवेन्यू ऑफिसर्स हुए, एम्प्लॉइज हुए, या फिर गवर्नमेंट के एजेंट्स नहीं भी थे, जैसे कि ट्रेडर्स और मनी लेंडर्स. तो बिकॉज ऑफ इन्फ्लक्स ऑफ दीज आउटसाइडर्स इन ट्राइबल एरियाज, ट्राइबल्स फेल्ट मार्जिनलाइज्ड इन देयर ओन होम. सो ये भी एक अफेक्ट हुआ. हाउ द रूल अफेक्टेड द ट्राइबल्स. एक और पॉइंट है, बिकॉज ऑफ द एंट्री ऑफ क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज इन दीज एरियाज, द ट्राइबल कल्चर, ट्राइबल रिलीजन ऑल्सो फेस्ड some kind of pressure, because these missionaries were involved in converting the tribal population. तो इस वजह से भी रिलीजन और कल्चर इनका पे प्रेशर में आया. सो हाउ कॉलोनियल रूल अफेक्टेड द ट्राइबल्स में आपको ये पॉइंट लिखने हैं. द नेक्स्ट पॉइंट इज व्हाट वाज द ट्राइबल रेस्पॉन्स टू द कॉलोनियल ऑपरेशन. सो इसमें मल्टीपल थिंग्स वी कैन राइट, बट वी हैव टू सी दैट हमारा आंसर 250 वर्ड्स में हो और हमारा आंसर वेल स्ट्रक्चर्ड हो. सो how to write what was the tribal response to the colonial operation? We can write that first point is revolt and rebellion. This is the first response. इसमें आप एग्जाम्पल दे सकते हो वेरियस रिवोल्ट्स एंड रिबेलियंस का, लाइक मुंडा, सांथाल. द सेकेंड रेस्पॉन्स इज दैट दे विल कीप अलूफ, that they will move to the areas in which this colonial rule is not present. They will see that we will keep a safe distance from the colonial rulers, and we will go more in the interior areas. So they keep aloof, that we will not go. Isolation and avoidance जिसको हम कह सकते हैं, policy of isolation and avoidance. The third point में आप लिख सकते हैं कि ट्राइबल एरियाज ने क्या सोचा, कल्चरल प्रिजर्वेशन. और फोर्थ है पीसफुल रेजिस्टेंस. यहाँ पे क्या है, वायलेंट रेजिस्टेंस है रिवोल्ट एंड रिवोलियन में. और कल्चरल प्रिजर्वेशन का क्या मतलब है, अगर जब आपको लगेगा बिकॉज ऑफ दीज मेनी रीजन्स एंड स्पेशली ड्यू टू द एंट्री ऑफ क्रिश्चियन मिशनरीज कि आपका कल्चर थ्रेट है, अंडर थ्रेट है, तो दे स्टार्टेड टेकिंग स्टेप्स टू प्रिजर्व देयर कल्चर. मोर फोकस के जो भी ट्राइब के लोग हैं वो अपने कल्चर से ज्यादा जुड़े रहें. दे ट्राई टू प्रिजर्व देयर कल्चर मोर इन ए मिलिट्रिक वे. और जो पीसफुल रेजिस्टेंस है ये भी बाद में जब गांधीयन रेजिस्टेंस चालू हुआ तो मेनी ट्राइबल रेजिस्टेंस ने पीसफुल रेजिस्टेंस अपनाया और दे integrated themselves in the freedom struggle. So these are the responses to the colonial operation. अगर आप इस तरह का आंसर लिखेंगे, बहुत ही सिंपल आंसर है, बहुत ही सिंपल स्ट्रक्चर है, but it almost covered all the points, and by this way, writing in this way, you can also complete all the points in the 250 words. Now we will move to the last question of our discussion, and last question is what was the difference? हाँ, अच्छा क्वेश्चन है. सो इट इज आस्किंग कि डिफरेंस क्या है किसमें, महात्मा गांधी और टैगोर इनके अप्रोच में, किस तरफ, एजुकेशन और नेशनलिज्म. बहुत ही स्ट्रेट फॉरवर्ड क्वेश्चन है, 150 वर्ड्स में आई थिंक आपको लिखना है, हाँ 150 वर्ड्स में और 10 मार्क्स में. सो यू कैन डायरेक्टली स्टार्ट दैट देयर इज अ मार्क डिफरेंस बिटवीन द अप्रोचेस ऑफ टू ग्रेट पर्सनालिटीज ऑफ 19th एंड 20th सेंचुरी. क्या? महात्मा गांधी और रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर और देयर अप्रोच इन द फील्ड ऑफ एजुकेशन एंड नेशनलिज्म. तो वी कैन स्टार्ट विथ टेकिंग कि महात्मा गांधी की एजुकेशन के प्रति अप्रोच क्या थी. अगर आपने वर्धा स्कीम पढ़ी हो या महात्मा गांधी के आइडियाज ऑन द एजुकेशन पढ़े हो तो यू नो कि उनका बहुत ही होलिस्टिक अप्रोच था. गांधी जी का अप्रोच होलिस्टिक अप्रोच था. उनका मानना था कि जो एजुकेशन है वो सिर्फ मेटेरियल वेलबींग नहीं पर स्पिरिचुअल और इंटेलेक्चुअल वेलबींग भी किसी पर्सन की करनी चाहिए, ऐसी एजुकेशन होनी चाहिए. तो होलिस्टिक अप्रोच होना चाहिए, वैल्यू बेस्ड होनी चाहिए. एजुकेशन वैल्यू बेस्ड होगी तो कैरेक्टर जो होगा वो अच्छा डेवलप होगा और अच्छे सिटीजन बनकर आएंगे. साथ में गांधी जी का क्या अप्रोच था कि वोकेशनल ट्रेनिंग शुड बी प्रोवाइडेड अलोंग विद द एजुकेशन सो दैट ए पर्सन विल बी एबल टू अर्न their livelihood when they will come outside the educational institution. So बहुत ही सिंपल अप्रोच गांधी जी का था. आपको यही यहाँ पे लिखना है कि जो एजुकेशन सिस्टम में जो अप्रोच था कंप्रहेंसिव था. वर्धा स्कीम के बारे में आप थोड़ा लिख सकते हैं. इसके उलट अगर आप जाएंगे तो रविन्द्रनाथ टैगोर फिलोसोफर, पोएट, पेंटर, तो इनका अप्रोच थोड़ा अलग था. इनका अप्रोच ये था कि एजुकेशन इज ए टूल फॉर सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन. इंडिविजुअल शुड बी एबल टू रियलाइज द पोटेंशियल, inherent potential, and Tagore was against the conventional school system. तो इस तरीके के सिस्टम के ये अगेंस्ट थे कि जो कन्वेंशनल स्कूल सिस्टम है कि आप 12th तक करो या 10th तक करो, जैसा भी उस समय सिस्टम था अलग अलग स्टेट में, फिर आप कॉलेज एजुकेशन करो और उसके बाद आप नौकरी ढूंढने जाओ. नहीं, उनका कहना था सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन इज द अल्टीमेट गोल ऑफ एनी एजुकेशन. एंड ये जो वेस्टर्न आइडिया था एजुकेशन का उसके भी अगेंस्ट थे. इनका क्या आइडिया था? इनका आइडिया था कि सेल्फ रियलाइजेशन करना है आपको, यू हैव टू गो फॉर इंडिपेंडेंस, यू हैव टू गो फॉर यूनिवर्सलिज्म, यू हैव टू गो फॉर परफेक्शन इन द एजुकेशन. टू अचीव दीज ऑब्जेक्टिव्स क्या स्टार्ट करा? शांति निकेतन, खुद का एक स्कूल, खुद का एक इंस्टीट्यूशन स्टार्ट करा. यू कैन राइट अबाउट दीज आइडियाज. साथ में ये किसके क्या प्रमोट करते थे? मल्टी कल्चरल अप्रोच होना चाहिए. तो मल्टी कल्चरल अप्रोच होना चाहिए. दिस इज द आइडिया ऑफ टैगोर इन द एजुकेशन फील्ड. ऑल्सो टैगोर वांट्स के जो भी अप्रोच है, जो भी इंडिया की कम्युनिटीज हैं, दे शुड बी सेल्फ सफिशिएंट होनी चाहिए. सो दीज आर द अप्रोचेज ऑफ टैगोर एंड गांधी ऑन द एजुकेशन इन द सिंपल सेंस. अब अगर हम नेशनलिज्म पे अप्रोच देखें तो गांधी जी का नेशनलिज्म का अप्रोच हम सबको टू वेल नोन टू एक्सप्लेन, बट फिर भी इन सिंपल वर्ड्स में हम लिखना चाहेंगे. गांधी जी वॉज अगेंस्ट द कॉलोनियल रूल. गांधी जी वांट टू अचीव द इंडिपेंडेंस ऑफ इंडिया बाय यूजिंग द वेपन ऑफ नॉन वायलेंस एंड सत्याग्रह. सो नॉन वायलेंट मेथड गांधी जी अप्रोच अडोप्ट कर रहे थे फॉर द नेशनलिस्टिक गोल ऑफ फ्रीडम ऑफ इंडिया. साथ में गांधी जी का जो अप्रोच था बहुत ही सेक्युलर था, जिंगोइस्टिक अप्रोच नहीं था नेशनलिज्म को लेकर, एंटागोनिस्टिक टू एनी अदर नेशन नहीं था. गांधी जी का बहुत ही फेमस स्टेटमेंट है, डोंट हेट द इंग्लिश, हेट देयर पॉलिसीज, कॉलोनियल पॉलिसीज. कि जब इंग्लिश मैन को इसलिए हेट मत करो कि वो इंग्लिश है, सिर्फ उनके कॉलोनियल अप्रोच को हेट करो. सो गांधी जी का जो अप्रोच था वो जिंगोइस्टिक बिल्कुल नहीं था. साथ में गांधी जी वॉज स्ट्रॉन्ग बिलीवर इन द आइडिया ऑफ इंडिया, बट एट द सेम टाइम गांधी जी वॉज प्रमोटिंग द कल्चरल लिंगुअल डाइवर्सिटी ऑफ इंडिया एंड वॉज इन द फेवर दैट ईच एंड एवरी region of India should preserve their own cultural and lingual identity. ठीक है. सो ये गांधी जी का नेशनलिज्म पे अप्रोच है. टैगोर का अप्रोच क्या है? टैगोर का अप्रोच है वासुदेव कुटुंबकम टाइप का, कि वर्ल्ड इज ए नेस्ट, वी ऑल आर द इनहेरिटर ऑफ द कॉमन लाइनेज. एंड व्हाट वाज दैट लाइनेज? द ह्यूमन रेस लाइनेज. So there should be no difference between the people of a particular country or between the people of prosperous countries or people of poor countries. And he was against the idea of political boundaries. According to Tagore, the people have the common lineage, common linkage, common heritage. He was a true यूनिवर्सल अप्रोच इनका था इस सेंस में कि जितने भी मल्टी कल्चर्स हैं वो सब क्लेम कर सकते हैं एनी गुड थिंग कमिंग आउट ऑफ एनी पर्टिकुलर नेशन, सो कॉल्ड नेशन या कल्चर. और ये पॉलिटिकल डिवीजन में बिलीव नहीं करते थे, मल्टी कल्चरल और यूनिवर्सल अप्रोच था. ही वाज ए यूनिवर्सल सिटीजन, आप इस तरीके से कह सकते हैं. इनका शोविनिस्टिक नेशनलिस्टिक अप्रोच बिल्कुल भी नहीं था. ही वाज टू फॉर द फ्रीडम ऑफ इंडिया, बट ही वाज अगेंस्ट द जिंगोइस्टिक नेशनलिज्म, शोविनिस्टिक नेशनलिज्म, कि अगर मेरा नेशनलिज्म इसी बात पर है कि आप किसी नेशन के अगेंस्ट हो, ही डिड नॉट बिलीव इन दैट काइंड ऑफ नेशनलिज्म. सो दीज आर द डिफरेंस बिटवीन द अप्रोच ऑफ गांधी जी एंड रविंद्रनाथ टैगोर जी इन द फील्ड ऑफ एजुकेशन एंड इन द फील्ड ऑफ नेशनलिज्म. सो हमने देखा कि बहुत ही सिंपल ये हम पेपर हो सकता था अगर आपका अप्रोच सिंपल हो. हमेशा ट्राई टू राइट सिंपल आंसर इन सिंपल वर्ड विद ए सिंपल structure. We have a where you can write a simple introduction, main body जिसमें कि कंटेंट बहुत अच्छा हो, रिच कंटेंट हो, सिंपल वर्ड्स में हो. ट्राई टू कवर मोर नंबर ऑफ पॉइंट्स इन ए सिंपल वे, और फिर एक सिंपल कंक्लूजन हो. कंक्लूजन, इंट्रो एंड मेन बॉडी शुड बी डायरेक्टली रिलेटेड विद द क्वेश्चन. हवा में बात नहीं करनी. और अभी हमने देखा मोस्ट ऑफ द क्वेश्चंस आपने जो अगर इंटीग्रेटेड अप्रोच रखा होता तो आपने जो प्रीलिम्स में पढ़ा है उसमें बहुत आपको यहाँ फायदा हो सकता था. तो ठीक है फ्रेंड्स, यहीं पर हमारा डिस्कशन आज हम खत्म करते हैं. एंड हो गया. अच्छा, तो इफ एनीवन वांट टू आस्क ए क्वेश्चन, अगर आपको कुछ डाउट है, कोई क्वेश्चन है, आप चाहें तो पूछ सकते हैं. पूछिए अगर आपको कोई सवाल पूछना है तो. यूपीएससी की तैयारी कैसे करें? देखिए, यूपीएससी की तैयारी का ये अभी मंच नहीं है इसका आंसर देने का, बिकॉज इट्स ए एक्सटेंसिव डिस्कशन हाउ टू प्रिपेयर. अगर आप चाहें तो आप यहाँ पे टाइम लेके आ सकते हैं, मिल सकते हैं. सो वी कैन हैव ए डिस्कशन 1-on-1. और अगर कोई स्पेसिफिक आज के डिस्कशन को लेके आपका डाउट है, और इसके जो आंसर्स हैं, डिटेल्ड आंसर, वो हमने लिंक में डाले हुए हैं फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ स्टूडेंट्स. आप वहाँ पे जाके इसको देख सकते हैं. फिर भी आपकी क्लास के बाद भी अगर आपको कोई डाउट हो तो यू कैन कॉन्टेक्ट द रिलेवेंट पर्सन्स. ओके, थैंक यू.